John, pay to play, and is it good for business in your mind?
It's pay to play is, I don't think, ever really good for business. It's only really good for the politicians because they win regardless. On the pay to play, it's uncertain. You're just always, it's likely that someone else can outbid you at some point. There's always a bigger fish. And so I think that's what most business people actually understand. And most of the people that I speak with are just the way you heard from Halliburton. This is not something that business is interested in or wants, but it's a downward cycle. If it starts, you have to play, or someone is going to replace you, and they're going to play, and you just got booted out. But the activity, that systemic feedback loop, will continue on. I have friends who are CEOs of companies that are bemoaning the fact that rather than actually running their business, they're having to spend a lot more time figuring out how to manage these issues that are massively distractive but critical, and that their board is demanding that they pay attention, because these are things that will affect the overall performance of the company, and it's not a good thing at all. I've done business in Russia, I've done business in the Middle East, and there, I must say, you sort of expect it. You know that you need to know the right people and pay off the right people to get to a certain place. But when it's happening in the United States, it's really shocking. And now, it is so obvious, and it is the irony of things like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which I know people who've been fired for bribing people overseas to do business, but here we are in the United States, right, and we've effectively legalized bribery in the United States, yet we have this other law that says that you can't do it overseas. So it is a bizarre environment right now for business. It's disorienting, and it is really a bad thing that is happening, where we've completely convoluted the concept of free enterprise and capitalism with this free-for-all in our current view of politics. And it's neither good for the politics, nor is it all good for business. And I really think that that's an important aspect here. I think you'll find business people are highly sympathetic to causes like this, but they have to be very careful, because they can't necessarily stand up in their position as the CEO or the chief legal officer and opine. But when you talk to them as individuals, they absolutely see the issues, because it puts them under massive stress and puts them in very untenable positions with, in many instances, their own moral points of view. And Elizabeth, obviously you know a lot about that.
Well, I actually did a lot of interviews with people about those private moral pressures.
Yeah, you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, I want to follow up one aspect of what you just said, and then you kind of pitched into the next question. What do you feel business people would rather focus on? Right? What you described this as kind of a distraction, a downward spiral, a black hole of I have to focus on this in the short term to stay alive. What would they rather focus on?
Most business people actually enjoy the practice of competing in the marketplace. I mean, that's sort of what gets them up in the morning, and they generally enjoy winning in the marketplace with rules that are actually relatively stable. If I'm better at something, if I can outthink a competitor or find a different way to present this information to my customer, I'm going to win. It's disorienting if you do that and you find out that all the things you learned about how to succeed in business don't work if all you do is pay relatively not a lot of money to certain politicians, and they literally rewrite the law to choke out your competitor, or limit your ability to access the market. That is really disturbing, and it's not something that most business people I know want to do, because most of them can see the next step. You may win once, but that doesn't mean you're going to win again, and you probably won't win the third time. And I think every business knows that there's always someone with more money, and it is literally a black hole that you really can't get out of.
Okay, so let's go to the next question, because you talked about it being tricky, and I'd like to ask both of you this. Do you feel business people should be for or against the 28th Amendment? How do you think about that?
I think it is tricky, because a lot of executives, certainly in public companies, have to produce quarterly results, and they have to have expectations, and they're held deeply accountable to that. And if that is put at risk by some reason, they're going to do almost whatever it takes. They're going to take all actions that they can take to actually get the result they're looking for. And if it turns out that it's now legal and my competition is doing this as well, and if that's affecting my ability to make my earnings, well, here I go. I am going to go back down to Washington. I'm going to actually create a team that's down in Washington focused on figuring out how to get advantage out of Washington, because I'm competing with people who do that. So the rules have changed, I need to change, and I'm going to keep up because I have to hit my quarterly numbers. That same person, if you get them in a slightly different context, they know that this is a really bad thing. And, but they're stuck. This is a systemic problem. They're in the middle of it, and they're a player, and they don't actually get to step outside of it. So this comes back around, and again, the work that the team at Harvard Business School did, everyone's saying the same thing, and you're going to hear it over and over. This is a systemic problem. If you're inside and you're a player, you don't actually get to change the system. It takes people outside of it to step in and make a lot of these changes. So I think that's what we're dealing with right now, is finding ways to come in outside this, because all by itself, this system is going to spin and spin all the way down the hole. And I think while that can be a depressing thought, it's also the reason that you need to take action. And when you talk to business people about it, and we are doing that, and Elizabeth has been really doing some great work on that in San Francisco, and we're going to try to replicate that in other places. But when people find a way out, it's a breath of fresh air. And so the challenge is, I'm in the middle of it. I have real immediate constraints by my board or by my investors, but I realize that I'm headed down a really bad cycle. So that's the issue. It's the day-to-day reality versus the I understand this is tilted, and it both pisses people off. We get that, but they need a way to get out and find ways, and we're hoping to help provide that.
Thank you. Yeah. So I just in closing here, we've shortened our conversation just a little bit.